My subordinate only graduated middle school. How embarrassing. Banish him to the boonies. Yes, I was taken aback by the sudden event, my eyes wide with surprise. Upon closely examining the document she thrust in front of me, I realized it was my resume from when I first joined the company. President Smith was looking over my education section and seemed to notice that I only had a middle school diploma. Your attitude has been so. I intended to check which university you graduated from, but to think you hadn't even finished high school, she scorned my educational background and began to laugh uproariously. It's troubling to be told about a demotion all of a sudden. I've been with this company for 21 years. Please reconsider, I pleaded, but she was not willing to listen. All right, I'll start packing up right away. As I began following her orders, President Smith smirked with satisfaction. After packing up, I greeted my colleagues in the sales department and quickly left the company. President Smith watched me leave with a satisfied smile, but she would face her own downfall 3 days later. My name is Tim Brown, a 40-year-old man. Currently, I work in the headquarters of Dono Corporation, a small and medium-sized auto parts manufacturer, as a sales department employee. Having lost my father at a young age, I was raised by my mother, and despite our poverty, we had a happy life. Upon graduating middle school, I chose not to pursue high school to help with living expenses and started working part-time jobs. However, a year later, my mother passed out at work and was rushed to the hospital. The cause was physical issues from malnutrition and overwork, as well as mental health problems stemming from stress. My mother had to be hospitalized until she recovered, and I needed to earn money for the expenses. A few days later, I received a call from my Uncle Tyler White, whom we hadn't been in contact with for a while. Upon hearing about our situation, my uncle offered to cover the hospital bills. I decided to accept his generous offer. Although Uncle Tyler also offered to support my living expenses, I chose to earn them myself, so as not to rely too much on his kindness. 2 years later, my mother had fully recovered, and with my uncle's help, we resumed a normal life. At 19, I saved up enough money to prepare for job hunting and started applying for jobs. After several interviews, I was hired by Dono Corporation, quit my part-time jobs, and began a new chapter in my life. Assigned to the sales department, I learned about work and society from my seniors and supervisors while working hard. Even now, 21 years later, I am still enjoying my work. My mother lives in a senior living facility where she seems healthy and enjoys hobbies with other residents. When my uncle and I had time off work, we would eat out at the pub, enjoying our days together. As I was going about my usual business at work, President Sarah Smith appeared in the department. Hey, what's going on? You haven't met your quota for the month at all. Didn't I say your bonus would be cut if you don't meet it? She raised her voice, complaining about the quota. President Smith had just been appointed last month, having previously served as vice president. She usually carried a condescending attitude towards anyone who wasn't in a higher position than herself, which made her unpopular among the employees. However, she was more competent at her job than anyone else, which is why she was chosen as the president and is now busy with executive duties. President Smith also conducted occasional walkthroughs in the office, often complaining and demanding excessive work. Hey Brown, are you listening? I'm talking to you. At your age, you should be outperforming everyone in securing contracts. Yes, she turned towards me and started yelling. I tend to be targeted because of my quiet appearance and being somewhat older. What kind of response is that? Do you even care? By the way, the new hires you're training seem to be falling short, with less than 10 contracts each. You need to coach them properly. But President Smith, they've only been here for a month. Despite the unreasonable quota this month, they've worked hard and secured contracts. I think that's more than sufficient, I argued back, but President Smith seemed unconvinced. An unreasonable quota? Don't be soft. This is normal. When I was an employee, I couldn't have achieved this much by myself. Yet, with so many of you, you can't even meet half the quota I set. That's sheer incompetence. She ranted at all the employees. Although boasting, the quota set by President Smith was truly unattainable for an average person. We had informed her that it was impossible, but she insisted on her views and forced us. As a result, there were plenty of complaints about President Smith. But if we kept arguing, we knew what she would do next. Despite my frustrations, I quietly apologized. "I'm very sorry." Seemingly satisfied, she stormed out of the sales department with loud, angry footsteps. President Smith continued to visit the sales department frequently, always finding me to complain about something. "Hey, can't this department greet properly when the president shows up? It's not enough to just bow your heads and say the usual greetings. Can't you say something nice, like, 'President, you look lovely today?'" She even complained about things unrelated to work, making me sigh with frustration. But opposing her would only lead to more unreasonable scolding. I kept apologizing profusely to deflect the conversation, trying my best not to dwell on it. A few days later, I had a morning appointment for a business meeting, so I got ready and headed to the client's company. The meeting was a success, and we started a business relationship with that company, which had been a target of mine for a while. Pleased, I returned to the sales department in a good mood. I immediately reported to the director. "You commended me," saying, "Well done." That company was also one that President Smith wanted to deal with. "Thanks to you, Brown, it's finally a reality," the director said with a smile, and I couldn't help but give a shy smile in return. As I was preparing to report to President Smith, she happened to visit the sales department. It seemed she was on her usual rounds, but I took the opportunity to inform her of today's negotiation outcome. "President Smith, I've just concluded the negotiation. As a result, we successfully secured a contract and can proceed with the transaction," I reported proudly. But President Smith's reaction was unexpected. "Oh, really? You finally secured the contract? That's too slow. You need to do it faster." She dismissed the conversation without any praise, as if it were expected. The director and I were confused by her response. Then President Smith said something even more astonishing. "Brown, lately your attitude towards me has been too disrespectful. You argue back at me, the president, and you can't even greet me properly. I can't entrust important tasks to such an employee. From today, you're appointed to menial tasks." Yes, menial tasks. She looked down on me with a smirk. I haven't been disrespectful to President Smith at all. I disagree, and it's not arguing. I'm just stating my opinion. I protested. But President Smith shouted back at me. "Again, it's unbelievable that you won't admit your own actions. Such a terrible employee in my presence. Even stating your own opinion is disrespectful. You should just quietly obey everything I say." Her unreasonable views left me speechless with astonishment. Then the director stepped in to try and calm President Smith. "President Smith, he has achieved a great feat for our company today. Could you possibly overlook this incident?" However, she glared at the director and replied, "So what? Securing clients is normal for the sales department, isn't it? Just because he landed a contract with a decent company doesn't mean he can get carried away. If you argue with me again, I'll cut your salary. Brown, you're on menial duties starting tomorrow. Got it?" With those words, President Smith stormed out of the sales department, breathing heavily. From the next day, whenever she had the chance, she would check the sales department to ensure I was focusing on menial tasks. If I was found working on my usual tasks, she'd command, laughingly, "Leave that to someone else and focus on the menial tasks. Support the employees who can actually do the job." Moreover, she started threatening to cut my salary. Now that I was on menial duties, I couldn't hold back and objected. "Cutting my salary is absolutely unacceptable. What do you think I've done?" But President Smith looked at me coolly and retorted, "Of course you should. You're on menial duties now. Don't expect to get paid the same as the other employees." She was laughing and completely dismissed my opinion. I was filled with anger due to her treatment, but due to my position, I had no choice but to comply. One day, as I was doing the menial tasks President Smith had assigned, she suddenly appeared in the sales department and approached me. Wondering what was happening, she thrust some documents at me. "So you only finished middle school? No wonder you're such an incompetent employee. It's a disgrace to have a subordinate who didn't even finish high school. Banish him to the boonies." I was shocked by the sudden event, My eyes wide, I checked the documents she thrust at me and realized they were my resume from when I first joined the company. President Smith looked at my education section and seemed to realize I was only a middle school graduate. Your attitude has been so bad, I intended to check which college you graduated from. But I never imagined you hadn't even finished high school. She scorned my educational background and began to laugh loudly. Angered by her demeanor, I couldn't help but retort. What's wrong with being a middle school graduate? Even without a high school or college degree, I have contributed to this company without any issues. You've been visiting the sales department frequently lately. You've seen my work, haven't you? Yes, of course, but it didn't look like you were contributing to the company. That's why I appointed you to menial tasks. Has it improved a bit? Her complacent expression filled me with intense anger, considering the treatment I had received from President Smith. However, since other employees were at work, I didn't raise my voice but still retorted while controlling my emotions. Why are you only harassing me, President Smith? Does it really bother you that much that I express my opinion? But that's because you make unreasonable demands. You still set targets that are impossible to meet, and since I've been relegated to menial tasks, it has become even harder. Suddenly, President Smith, who had been composed until then, changed her expression and began to get angry. Are you still defying me? The reason targets aren't met is because all of you, including you, are incompetent. Round, since you are now on manual duties, you should be supporting the others to meet their quotas. It's too late to say anything now, though. Your demotion has already been decided. She looked down on the entire sales department and reaffirmed my demotion. It seems President Smith is seriously intent on pushing me out of the company. Demotion is quite sudden, especially when I've been with this company for 21 years. Please reconsider, I pleaded, but she was unyielding. If you dislike it, that's fine too. But next time, it won't just be a demotion. I'll fire you. If you can't follow my orders, I'll fire anyone and kick them out of the company. There are plenty of replacements for any employee. Either way, you are no longer needed at this headquarters. With their typical threats, the other employees around us trembled with fear. After careful consideration, I realized I could not afford to leave the company because I needed to earn money for my mother's care facility. So despite my dissatisfaction, I quietly accepted the demotion. Understood. I'll start packing my things right away, I said, complying with her orders. President Smith smirked in satisfaction. Your first day at the new location is set for 3 days from now. I'll inform you later, but it's in a small company about 2 hours away from here, in the countryside. You will work there in the sales department. If you don't like it, you are free to resign any time. She waved me off, urging me to leave the company quickly. I simply responded with a yes and then silently prepared for my transfer. After packing my things, I quickly said goodbye to my colleagues in the sales department and left the company. President Smith watched me leave with a satisfied smile, but she was in for a surprise. 3 days passed, and on my first day at the new company, I drove for about an hour to the countryside from my home. Upon arriving at the company and heading to the president's office, I met a familiar face, not the president. Uncle, you're Tim. We stared at each other, both puzzled. Uncle, why are you here? Wait, isn't this company? You should be working at the headquarters. What are you doing here? You shouldn't have any business with this company, I said as my uncle tilted his head in confusion. President Smith entered the room. Excuse me, President. From today, you'll be dealing with an employee named Brown. Please handle him strictly. He is incredibly incompetent, she said, opening the door. She finally noticed me, shifting her gaze and seeing my uncle. She suddenly started trembling. Chairman, why are you here? She began to visibly shake with nervousness. Actually, my uncle was the former president and now chairman of the company. I worked for the company I was transferred to, which was originally founded by my uncle and was the original headquarters. However, to expand the company, the headquarters had been moved to the city. After stepping down as president and becoming chairman, my uncle would sometimes visit this old headquarters because it held many memories for him. On my first day, which was today, he happened to be visiting, and President Smith unknowingly came to mock me. Smith, Why is Tim here? He's supposed to be working at the main office, isn't he? Did he have some business here? Okay, I'll explain that later. But Mr. White and Mr. Brown, you seem quite familiar with each other. Do you know each other? She hesitantly asked my uncle. It appeared President Smith was unaware of our relationship. President Smith, didn't you know this man is my uncle? I said, Tim is right. He is my sister's son. Familiarity is an understatement. We're family. Haven't I mentioned that before? What? She was so astonished that her eyes almost popped out. Why hasn't anyone told me about this? Surely, Chairman White, you didn't know that Brown was working at the company. To the perplexed President Smith, I decided to explain. My uncle knew about my employment at this company since I reported to him when I was hired at 19. Initially, it was supposed to be just a job announcement, but upon hearing the company name, my uncle revealed something unexpected. Danso Corporation, you say? That's the company I run. What? Really? Until then, I hadn't been aware of what kind of job my uncle had. Unbeknown to me, I had applied for a job at my uncle's company, interviewed randomly, and was hired. After I joined, neither of us had the chance to disclose our relationship to others, and so we kept silent until now. This is why President Smith was unaware of it. After I finished explaining, she immediately asked, You two used to work at the same company, didn't you? You must have run into each other inside the company, right? Were you pretending not to know each other every time? Yes, that's correct. But it wasn't intentionally secretive. There was no need to hide it, but I didn't see a reason to flaunt it either. Revealing it could have changed how others treated me. If I had said, Tim is my nephew, all the employees would probably have tried to curry favor with him. Plus, the executives might have overrated him unnaturally. Thinking he would dislike that, I also pretended to be a stranger. My uncle chuckled, and President Smith was dumbfounded. Mr. Brown, do you really have such high pride? Tim has always had a strong sense of responsibility. Even after graduating middle school, he refused to let anyone else pay his living expenses. Despite it being tough, he really takes after his mother in that regard. Despite President Smith's presence, my uncle and I were deep in a family conversation. Although President Smith was obviously confused, my uncle brought the conversation back on track and asked her, Smith, I asked earlier, but did you bring Tim here today for some reason? I haven't received any reports about it. Well, I'll explain that later. It seemed she hadn't yet informed my uncle about my demotion. I decided to report it myself. As President Smith hesitated, I said, I've been transferred to this company starting today. President Smith ordered my demotion. Apparently, I'm incompetent and don't listen. So she said I'm not needed at the headquarters anymore. What? What do you mean, Smith? Wait, Mr. Brown, what are you saying? She hurriedly tried to stop me, but I didn't cease my explanation. Uncle, since it's come to this, I want you to know I've been subjected to various unreasonable treatments from President Smith. Brown, I won't allow you to tattle to Chairman White just because he's your uncle. Don't get carried away. Caught off guard, President Smith inadvertently behaved as usual in front of my uncle, who was the chairman. Seeing her reaction, my uncle's brows furrowed immediately. When we entered this office, you called Tim incredibly incompetent, didn't you? Can you explain what you meant by that? No, not at all. It's impossible that Mr. Brown is incompetent. He is excellent, works hard every day, and contributes greatly to the company. Today, I called him here to conduct an inspection of this company with me. She blurted out a lie in her haste, but my uncle looked at President Smith with suspicion. Under his scrutinizing gaze, she faltered and stammered. Seizing the opportunity, I reported all the mistreatments I had received from President Smith. I told my uncle about the unreasonable demotion, being assigned to menial tasks, and how she imposed unrealistic quotas inside the company, with penalties like cuts to bonuses and salaries if not met. My uncle's expression grew stern rapidly. I see. I understand the situation well now, Smith. It seems you have been neglecting to report many things to me. I had no idea the headquarters was in such a state. My uncle glared at President Smith, but she began to act as if she didn't know what he was talking about. Such things. I don't know about them. It's all nonsense. For Mr. Brown, how could someone competent like me neglect to report? President Smith tried to laugh it off, but it seemed my uncle saw through her lies. Don't lie. You always act ignorant when you're in trouble. I told you to correct this attitude when you became president, but you haven't improved at all. At my uncle's further anger, President Smith let out a small cry. It appeared that my uncle knew her character all too well. Seeing President Smith shrink back, I felt a bit of satisfaction and decided to share some information with my uncle. By the way, Uncle, I have some important information about President Smith. Do you know what it's about? What are you talking about? I have no idea. What is it this time? Both my uncle and President Smith were clueless about the information. Taking advantage of her unawareness, I began to explain. It seems she has been embezzling company funds. There are eyewitness accounts from accounting staff and other employees. I also had my suspicions. What? Is that true? Yikes! President Smith suddenly turned pale upon my revelation. Apparently, President Smith had been frequently using company money to buy luxury items for herself, claiming it was for entertaining clients. Employees had seen her suddenly driving expensive cars, and her lifestyle had noticeably improved. An accountant had once questioned her about these expenses, but she dismissed it, saying, "I'm the president, so it's okay," and ordered it to be kept from the chairman. Upon learning the truth, my uncle became furious. What in the world is going on? Not only have you been mistreating employees and lying to me, but you've also been taking company money for yourself. No, it's not true. I don't know anything about it. It must be a mistake. I'm innocent. President Smith continued to deny everything, but my uncle was not convinced. There's no way you don't know. Many employees have been suspicious. I had noticed your suits and accessories becoming more luxurious day by day. Just because you became president doesn't mean you suddenly came into a lot of money. Even when you were vice president, you were more modest with money. As I shared this, my uncle seemed to move from suspicion to conviction. Her behavior suggests that the information is correct. However, just to be sure, we'll conduct an internal investigation. Depending on the outcome, we might have to ask you to step down, Smith. Well, it can't be helped. Step down. Are you saying you're going to remove me from the presidency? President Smith reacted immediately. Of course, if the embezzlement is true, we'll have to involve the police. Plus, we'll seek damages. But don't worry, if it all turns out to be just nonsense, as you claim, that won't be necessary. Carly, stating this, suddenly began to tremble and clung to my ankle's legs. Please forgive me, I'm sorry. It was just a moment of temptation. I thought maybe I could borrow a little since I became president. There was no malice intended. She quickly admitted the truth and tried to justify her actions. But my uncle was unforgiving. It seems the information was indeed true. I had trusted you to handle the presidency because you were capable, but it appears I was wrong in my judgment, he said. It turned out it was my uncle who had chosen President Smith as the next president. She had graduated from a prestigious university and was rumored to be smart and savvy. However, it seemed she was not suited to be the president. My uncle, regretting his own actions, apologized to me. I especially caused you trouble. I'm truly sorry. Since becoming chairman, I didn't need to come to the office as much, and I became complacent. From now on, I'll pay attention not just to this old headquarters, but to all our branches, he said. Unexpectedly receiving an apology from my uncle, I quickly shook my head. It's not your fault, Uncle. It's all President Smith's doing. She's the one who should be apologizing. Hearing this, President Smith, who was clinging to my ankle's legs and crying, turned towards us. What? No, it's all Brown's fault that my embezzlement was discovered and that I have to step down as president. I definitely won't apologize, she said. Even at this point, she seemed unrepentant. My uncle and I sighed deeply, appalled. Why do you refuse to apologize? You've caused the most trouble to Tim. It's only right that you apologize, my uncle said. But despite her high pride, President Smith stubbornly refused to apologize to me. Then my uncle, clearly angry, scolded her. If you can't show any sincerity, don't expect to avoid the consequences. If you're not willing to apologize, then the punishment I mentioned earlier will proceed without delay. You'll wait at home until the investigation is complete." "What? Wait a minute." Shaken by my uncle's words, President Smith began to fall to her knees. "Okay, I understand. I am happy to apologize, Mr. Brown. I am truly sorry for what I have done. I got carried away after becoming president. From now on, I will strive to be a better president. Please forgive me," she said, rushed by him. She quickly turned towards me and prostrated herself on the spot. However, I could not forgive her. "I'm sorry, but I cannot accept your apology. I would have preferred if you had apologized voluntarily." "What? What are you talking about? I even bowed down to you. You should forgive me." Unhappy with my response, President Smith quickly raised her head and complained, but glared at by my uncle, she shrank back. "Even so, you embezzled money from my uncle's company. That's a criminal act. It would be better for you to face the punishment he suggests and reflect on your actions. This is a good opportunity for you to correct your character," my uncle added. I agreed with my uncle and suggested that we should also seek damages. President Smith began to growl in frustration. "Unbelievable. Just because I'm being pushed out by the chairman's nephew, it doesn't make it right." This devilish behavior, confounded by her incomprehensible resentment, upset me. But my uncle countered for me. "What are you talking about? You clearly have not reflected at all." "Understood. Today's inspection of the old headquarters will be postponed. We will head to the main office immediately to conduct the investigation. Smith, you better stay quietly at home. Once the results are in, we will proceed with the appropriate punishment," my uncle declared. With that, he was about to leave for the main office. Feeling the gravity of the situation, President Smith clung to my uncle's legs again, tears in her eyes. "Wait, please forgive me. It was all my fault. I'm terribly sorry for being presumptuous towards you, Mr. Brown. I got carried away after becoming president. Please just don't ask me to step down from being president," she desperately pleaded. But my uncle silently brushed her hand away and quickly left the president's office. At that moment, the president of the old headquarters hurried into the room. Chairman White just rushed out looking furious. "What happened while I was gone?" "Wait, isn't that President Smith from the main office? When did you come to our company?" President Smith, too distraught to look at him, collapsed on the floor and sobbed. I reassured the incoming president not to worry and briefly greeted him, marking my first day at work. Leaving President Smith behind, I headed to the sales department feeling refreshed. Shortly thereafter, my uncle went straight to the headquarters to conduct the investigation he had declared. A few days later, it was confirmed that the embezzlement I had disclosed was true. My uncle summoned President Smith for disciplinary action. He ordered her resignation and announced her dismissal from the company. Additionally, the embezzlement was reported to the police, and she was promptly arrested and jailed. She was also sued for the embezzled amount and ended up burdened with significant debt. Years later, after her release, she tried to find a new job but couldn't secure employment due to her criminal record and age. Reluctantly, she started working part-time in a field she had never experienced before. Due to her age and the cognitive decline from her time in prison, she struggled to learn the job. Consequently, she was targeted by her fellow part-time workers and is now known as incompetent, suffering from bullying at her new job. After enduring frequent harassment and changing jobs several times, she still faced bullying everywhere she went. However, due to her need to repay her debts, she couldn't afford to quit her jobs frequently and is now enduring hardships at her new workplace, living a poor life while diligently paying off her debts. As for me, even after President Smith stepped down, I didn't return to the main office but started anew at the old headquarters. The relationships at the main office were good, but the old headquarters, being in a rural area, had a closer community, which I found more comfortable. I've already moved to a house near the old headquarters. As for the main office, the rapid resignation of the president became a temporary media sensation, but things have settled down now. The new president, formerly the executive vice president, is now handling the cleanup of President Smith's mess while working hard for the company. Known for his good reputation since his employee days, he continues to receive high regard as president. Thanks to him and my uncle's various efforts, the company's performance has not been affected and continues to operate as usual. My uncle, after sincerely taking care of the aftermath and President Smith's issues, has been very busy but has finally managed to get some rest. He plans to visit the retirement home where my mother lives soon. She still sounds energetic over the phone, and I'm looking forward to visiting her. Moving forward, I hope to continue supporting my mother alongside my uncle, ensuring she lives a happy and healthy life.